Okay, Eli. Let's see. I asked you to come on to the show to talk about cult behaviors in the business world. But before we do that, can we talk about your background a little bit?
Look, my own background is pretty much varied because I did and I like it, did many different things in my life. So I'm Israeli, so I had to serve in the army. I studied mathematics. Then I moved into movies and TV directing, and then came to programming. Then I met Dr. Eli Goldratt. He changed quite a lot of things to me. And I started to be first with software, but then as a management consultant and educator. And I wrote several books on this issue. And this is quite something that I like still to continue as much as possible, really look to how you can significantly improve managing organizations. This is my chief interest, taking from the huge guidance of Dr. Eli Goldratt.
So I'd like to say something to the audience about Eli Goldratt really quick. So he got really big and famous in 1985 with the book The Goal. And what he was presenting was his theory of constraints, although I think that name wasn't in the book.
Quite.
And what I imagine a lot of people think of what theory of constraints is that it's a theory like relativity, Einstein's relativity. And I don't think that's accurate. The better way to look at it is it's the entire scientific field of the business world, which contains many theories like relativity. And it's like relativity in the sense that relativity refutes all other rival theories. That's what TOC does, all the theories inside of it. And I'm not saying that there aren't business theories outside of theory of constraints that are also scientific. I'm sure there's some of that, but theory of constraints was designed from the ground up with that in mind. In Eli's own words, Eli Goldratt, he was applying the scientific approach to the business world. And to be clear, he was a physicist. That was his first profession. And then he moved into the business world because basically, from what I understand from The Goal, people, and I know that book it's fiction, but he's trying to describe something real. And I think what he described in there was he was dragged into the business world from the university he was working in, from his buddies. And I guess he got really interested in it. And I remember him saying he decided when he was 21 years old, I'm going to teach the world how to think.
Yes,
That's what his goal was.
absolutely. This was his goal. Uh, I believe he had quite a lot of impact on a quite big number of people, but yet not the whole world is getting to understand what kind of revolution he's bringing the scientific approach into many other areas like management. Even though, like I said, there are certain differences, because in the business world, you might say it's already part of the science, is to start with what is the goal, what we like to achieve. So scientists like really to understand the whole world. Businessmen try to make good business. There are, of course, also other types of organization in which their goal is not necessarily business or money, but to achieve something else. There is no all that difference. That the whole starting point is what you want to achieve. And now, if this is really what you want to achieve, and we are not arguing about that, this is what you want, this is your right. Now you need, if you really are serious about it, you need to build what does it mean in order to achieve it.
So I'd like to clarify. You just mentioned non-business, like non-profits. Okay, so in Goldratt's words, theory of constraints is for organizations, which is any group of people working towards a goal, shared
Yes,
goals. So that could be a family.
yes.
So I believe this applies to parenting, although I don't think he really talked about it much, except for sometimes he makes a joke in his videos where he says a child keeps asking why in series, right? Why this? The parent answers, why this? And then maybe the fourth time the parent gets angry and says, go speak to your mother. So, I think he was saying it as a negative thing that he was doing.
Yes, of course, it is a negative thing because this is not any answer that motivates the child to keep asking questions, because asking question is very healthy. This means curiosity. This means
Honesty.
someone like to know. Of course, it might be that we don't have the answer so that the child can understand just in our
Also, the
mind
question
at
is a
that
bit vague.
moment. Okay,
Also, the
this is
child's asking
our
a big
difficulty.
question.
Just let us understand that this is our difficulty, that we need to be much better with it.
Yes.
But
blame the teacher more. Yes.
any goal that we put to ourselves could be personal. Personally, I like to focus on organization, even though you are absolutely right that the key ideas of Goldratt could be applied outside the area of managing organizations. Just with managing organization, we have something a little bit closer system that is still currently in the world pretty much flawed, could be vastly improved, and so it's a great mission.
So just to do an example to help people understand the broad scope of theory of constraints, the concept of constraint, I learned it first in chemistry. We called it their limiting factors. If you have a chemical reaction with two reactants and two products, and you need a little bit more of one of the reactants compared to the other, then one of them is driving the total reaction. The other one is, in TOC terms, has plenty of buffer. It is not the constraint. It's not the bottleneck. So I learned this in chemistry, not all these wording, but, and then when I saw it in TOC, I thought, oh, now I understand what's happening. This applies everywhere. And like you said, yes, it applies to one person too.
Absolutely. But we have to understand a little bit what is the new thing in it. I've learned about scarce resource when I learned the basics of economy. Okay, the word scarce resource already appears there. The thing is that people tend to see the world as a very complex. And part of the whole thinking, it cannot be. So what limits the organization from getting more of the goal is not, well, quite a lot of things limiting us from achieving our goal, and then there is a huge list. Cannot be a true huge list. It has to be eventually one thing that causes many other things. And we need to understand it. So currently in organization, what limits the organization? It could be that the culture of the organization, and let me just define culture as a set of values and beliefs and policies, sometimes is the one thing that prevents the organization from doing more. So many other improvement efforts could improve a little bit here, a little bit there, but not much. And if you touch this, then suddenly you are getting the improvement that you were looking for. And if you don't look for the one limiting factor well, sometimes there are more than one, but very, very, very few. You just let the assumption that the world is complex to take over, and if it is complex, what can we do? The normal solution for complexity is to divide the complexity into local systems, if you want, some subsystems, and each subsystems trying to look what can be done with that.
Independently of all the other ones. Yes.
Independently of all the other one, even though everybody knows that they are not independent, they are very much connected with, but this is what we can do, and that's it. And sort of Goldratt taught many of the people around him that this is not the case. It should not be treated as a case. It could.
So I just want to clarify something. You mentioned culture and you defined it as values, beliefs, and a third thing. I don't remember.
Policy.
Policies, yes. I want to say, in my view, 95% of that is not even in words. It is intuitions, emotions, knowledge that people have that they cannot express in words yet. And part of TOC is to extract it from people and put it into words.
Yes, TOC tries quite a lot to use our own intuition, especially the good intuition about things that we really care about, and try to make it much more clear to us by really verbalize the cause and effect behind. That it is not just because we somehow feel that to go this way is better than to go this way. Probably there are some reasons, and let us try to fully understand it. And when we understand it, we truly understand the picture and what really we should do in order to exploit the way in the best way that we can. And get a little bit more, because I'm saying the best way. We will never get to the best way. We can be on the way and be better and better and better and better, and this is what we should always try to do.
So I would say one of the flaws in the business world, and I would say this is the whole world everywhere, is that I think people don't recognize that most of our knowledge is inexplicit. And so when they hit a wall where they can't explain something, or at least currently can't explain something, they just stop and they don't continue.
Okay.
And then the knowledge never gets discovered.
Yes, I am trying to understand this part of it. And one of the things that these are my sort of current thoughts a little bit about it is there is a huge fear within the organization, because eventually an organization is made of people. And so for me, being part of the organization, I am still Eli Schragenheim as an individual who has his own life and family and wishes and all kinds of things I want to achieve in my life. So as my part in the organization, many employees feel many times even totally not connected to the organization where we work. We need to work in order to make money, in order to be able to live in a way that we like or want about.
So we have a meaning of life, and so that we don't want to do what people fear, which is leave.
But I need this security of getting my salary every month.
And not being homeless, yes, in the extreme case.
And not being homeless, and when possible to get promoted, we like it, we love it, and we like that we will be promoted, not the other ones that competing with us on it. So there is internal competition within the organization, and there is a huge fear in which I like now to raise the other things that I think people don't fully understand, and they don't fully understand uncertainty. And from whatever, from reasons I can explain, the fear from uncertainty is much higher within the organization than with our own life, because with our life, we were born to, we sort of understand it, we live about well enough with it. We have all kinds of strange things that we do. So if I really need to go to a very critical medical checks, sometimes I try to delay it, even though this is so stupid. But this is a kind of fear of uncertainty, fear that someone will tell me something that I really don't like to be told, even. Again, absurdity. But within the organization, here is a kind of fear. I think it will good for me as a manager in the organization to take certain action, call it X. But I also feel that if I take X, there could be a negative result, and then all my competitors in the organization will say, Eli, you simply don't know anything, you need to move out. Which is a huge mistake. First of all, not understanding the impact of uncertainty, and any decision we do is a decision under a certain level of uncertainty, which means there is a certain probability that the result will not be what we hope for, but something else. Many times we are fully aware of it, but we need to make a decision. So we make a decision. And to be then to get so bad critique because of it, I think people are too much afraid of it. Look, some have no choice. Take the coach of a basketball team or something like this. At a crucial point in the game, he needs, if you want to gamble, who is a player that would change the course of the game right now? See, sometimes he is making the right decision because he puts someone and everything changes for the good. Many times the change is not good. And then all kinds of people in the press that after the game will make that all the mistakes that the coach did. Come on. Where did you put yourselves in the shoes of the coach having to make a decision? Should I go on A or should I go on B? And who knows? What do I mean, who knows? I can give some kind of probability to here and there, but it is totally intuitive. I don't know, but I need to make a decision.
Can I give a clear example for people that's not in business?
Yeah.
So if you were thinking to play the lottery, the kind where you pay $1 and you might win $100 million. And if you were to judge whether it was a good idea after finding out if you won or lost, then you would say, and a lot of people do this, this is I think what you're describing. If I had won the lotto, somebody would say that was a smart decision. If I had lost, that was a bad decision. That's incorrect reasoning. You need to be able to decide whether it was good or bad before seeing the result.
Of course, because this is a challenge. The challenge is I have to make a decision when I cannot be sure. I mean, I'm fully aware. There is a very small chance that I will win huge amount, and there is a big chance that I will lose $1. So, okay, I'm making a decision knowing the possible consequences.
So, by the way, I do not play the lottery.
Okay, me too, not playing the lottery, but we are doing gambles every day,
yes,
here and there. It's
yes.
enough that I don't know.
Every action, in a sense, is a gamble, yes.
It is a gamble. When I decided to marry, it was a gamble. turned out to be great gamble. Okay, but there was a kind of a recognition that here, I mean, I know what I know so far, and I try to put it into the future in a way that seems reasonable, but again, there are all kinds of possibilities here. And we don't understand this. Look, Rami, if I just look without going really into politics, but I just look in the situation in Israel, at October 7th, all the concepts of our key people, both in politics but also in the military, were totally wrong. They did not read the picture. It took too long to understand something, which means they fall into a concept. Now I see people saying that in this kind of situation, the chief of staff, who was part of the blindness, if you want, now start to nominate new generals. And they say, how can you? You are already contaminated with this huge mistake. Tell me something. If that guy, let us suppose everything he did was really for what he believed was the right thing to do, and he made a major mistake. If you now throw him out and you put a new guy in, is a chance of repeating such kind of a mistake bigger or smaller?
Smaller. Because
really?
Theoretically you learn from the mistake if you keep him.
Who learned more? Who learned more? The one who did not have a clear concept to start with because he was not in the situation in which he had to build a certain concept? Or the one who built his concept and suddenly saw how the concept was destroyed? And if he is a good thinking person, don't you think that he will learn the lesson?
Yeah, it's the second person. And it's like saying he had a scientific theory and he tested it and then he learned from it.
Yes. So it depends. I mean, what we need now are people who are courageous enough to tell themselves that they were totally wrong and there is something deep that they need to change, and they should not jump on what needs to change too fast because it is never all that obvious. There is something that is obvious. We didn't see this and that. What it will tell you next time with very different situation, with very different people that you are facing, unless you really understand why was I stuck in a concept that I knew even before, that while I gave it the biggest chance, I never gave it 100% probability that this is the right concept. And if I did not give it 100%, it means that I had to be very looking for if something is really telling me that I was wrong, and I needed to be very open to it, which I probably was not in this case. But I need to teach myself that next time I will see when something goes against what I thought, I will still be able to grasp it very quickly.
And I don't know if this is changing the subject, but one major way people can do that successfully is do not ignore anybody that is trying to tell you that you're wrong. So
but
your
even
advisor,
even yourself, you can take a CEO of a company who made a deal with something from another country, and then the politics in the other country have changed. I don't want just to mention names of countries, and the whole deal was actually going to a halt. So this guy needs to tell himself, when I went into it, did I see really what might happen? or I was too much locked in what looked to be too good opportunity to get it passed from me.
So just to
Did
link
I
this
look?
back to, I just want to
So
link this back. Oh, go ahead.
I need to learn. And my concept is, I wrote a lot about it, is that we need to learn from surprises. And for me, the funny thing is there is a huge tendency not to learn from our surprises, to try immediately to call either, okay, this is in 1 in a million, so what could I do? Okay. And not going to try to understand what the hell did I miss here. Rami, in other times, we were a little bit arguing a little bit about what happened to Boeing. And again, let me just state one observation. I mean, there could be quite a lot more about observation. But the huge flaw in the part of the MAX aircraft was a small piece of software that did something wrong, and then there was a huge terrible thing with a Malaysian aircraft who crashed. And after some time, that was probably difficult for them because the obvious one to blame were the pilots of the Malaysian company. I mean, how good the pilots of Malaysian company could be. Come on, this is absurd.
Yeah, that is the first thing that was said by Boeing. But yeah,
Yes.
I think that's dishonest to immediately jump to that. It's jumping to
Yes.
conclusions.
But eventually they found out what really went wrong. And then they kept quiet because how they will look like, how the business will look like, what will be the negative things of the business.
And that is a cult behavior where they're trying to protect the cult.
Absolutely. This is the most terrible thing for me. This was a crime for me. This not telling the world what really happened and eventually letting to the Ethiopian aircraft to crash under exactly the same circumstances because of the same causality. This is a huge failure of learning because we cannot be perfect. We cannot, but we need to try to become perfect, even if we cannot.
So can I give a little bit broader explanation about Boeing really quick? Just to tell the audience, if you don't know what we're talking about, please watch a documentary on Netflix about Boeing. And there's a couple good ones on YouTube you could find. And what we're talking about is more the most famous and recent outcomes of Boeing culture. But I want to talk about what Boeing culture was before McDonnell Douglas, before they joined with McDonnell Douglas, and then afterwards. So before McDonnell Douglas joined them, what I heard about Boeing was that their engineering team was amazing, which is, I guess, why McDonnell Douglas wanted to join them. And then when that joining happened, what I heard is, and this is from the documentary, the upper management became the McDonnell Douglas people, and the engineering team of Boeing stayed. And what changed was the upper management was into quotas and not engineering or science. And so they ended up doing things that pressured the engineers to not speak when there's problems, which is against what Boeing culture was. So the culture changed to this new culture, which was very anti-scientific. It is cult behavior. And we gave an example just now, and there's many more, to the point that, engineers were getting fired if they speak up. Whistleblowers are being treated as traitors.
Yeah. Look also, because Boeing is in the air traffic business, and the air traffic business is extremely sensitive about quality and should be.
Needs to be.
Maybe some other types of businesses don't need this level of dedication to quality without any compromises. So you cannot just copy the culture from something, I don't know, printing books to flying aircraft with so many passengers in them that you have committed to their safety. And this is all about this kind of air traffic, the commitment to the safety of the passengers. So you need to understand that the original, according to you, the original Boeing culture had to be in place and cannot be compromised. And if it will be compromised, eventually the business will take down.
Meaning that it is anti-profit also.
Yes, absolutely.
Those
It's
behaviors,
anti-business. Eventually,
yes.
it's anti-business. So
the reason I mention that is a lot of people think that the McDonnell Douglas management, thinking about quotas, that they're very pro-profit, but they are actually destroying their own profit in the long term.
absolutely, in a big way. Yes, in a big way. And this is the kind also of learnings that other organizations should learn from it. And to what level of service they are committed to, in which they cannot do any concession to certain things, no matter what the short-term business result might be impacted. Because those are much more important. They have to understand it. It's so easy to destroy a business because of these kind of small mistakes that suddenly became huge mistakes.
So another way I think to say what you're describing here is there's like levels of things that are important, and the highest one is if you sabotage truth, it ruins everything else.
Yes, you need to understand this causality and what does it mean. And based on it, you need to, first of all, define the culture of the organization that would support this kind of logic and all the consequences of it. You need to have it in place. And maybe it's not exactly the same for different organizations, but every organization needs to go through it and to define it. And so when this kind of culture suddenly get changed, then could be that the culture became the constraint of the overall organization. No matter everything else, what technologies they have and smart people and money and materials, everything, they all have more than enough, but without the right culture, they cannot go on.
So you're saying flawed culture is the biggest constraint in big corporations?
No, not necessarily. Many times the culture is good enough, and now you are constrained by something else, and you need to
there's plenty of corporations that are fine then.
Yeah,
For culture.
quite some of them yes, some of them no. What I'm saying is many organizations are not constrained by their culture, but there are certainly some organizations that are definitely are constrained.
So Boeing would be the example of a corporation where their biggest constraint is culture.
Yes, but I've seen even others in which, for instance, the culture of the top management is totally power game. It's me, it's not you, it's this, and then the whole organization is totally stuck. What can I say? I mean, I've seen it. But in many other organizations in which management are good enough not to do this kind of things, and so they did form about right, not perfect. We never have perfect. But if you improve the culture, at that time, you can improve the overall result by a little bit. But when the culture is a constraint, without facing the culture, you will go down.
To be clear, a small improvement in culture could have a huge effect on the bottom line, the profit.
If really the culture is a constraint.
Yes,
If this
yes,
is true, if this is the case, yes, then change, smaller changes in the culture could be very meaningful
yes,
on the impact on the goal of the organization.
yes. And the reverse could happen. Which happened to Boeing. If a company had amazing culture and the culture wasn't a constraint, and then they destroy the culture, now that became a constraint, and that's like saying this non-bottleneck in Boeing became a bottleneck.
Yes, absolutely. Now they are constrained by it, and maybe they have all kinds of luck because they are so big, so they have only one truly big competitor and maybe 2 or 3 smaller ones, but they
Also, it
need to
seems
pay
the
a lot of
FAA,
attention.
I mean, according to the documentary I watched, it seems the FAA sort of propped up Boeing's mistakes. And maybe that entity on its own has its own issues, separate from what it's doing with Boeing.
Yes, okay. But there are quite a lot of different constraints and quite a lot of flawed assumptions, okay? What you might call pseudoscience that are coming on, all kinds of beliefs that can be proven that they are not good, that they are leading to less results than they should be. The ones that we fought, I'm saying we as a TOC community fight as much as possible, is the notion of the need to be efficient of every single resource. Now, depending on how you interpreted the word efficient, if you say efficient means I have to give as a resource to the organization, let us say 48 hours a week, and in each minute of those 48 hours, I'm bringing value to the company. If this is what happens with me, then I turned myself into the bottleneck of the organization, and it has very difficult impact on the bottom line. Because practically, if I'm that loaded, it means things, it takes a lot of time to do what I should have done because I'm so busy. And any change that I need to react to, change because there is some uncertainty, there is some variability in the world. Okay, so I need a little bit here, a little bit there, but then I don't have time, I cannot. And then everything is stuck. You see, once you understand how flawed is this wish that every resource, theoretically, they like it to work 100% of the time, and I did enough simulations in order to see how bad the situation is going to be if I load the system so all the resources should be fully loaded, and what it gets is total chaos. Now, we cannot allow chaos. And because of this, people in the organization understanding a little bit, at least intuitively, what does it mean, they hit buffers. So if I get a job and I'm saying it will take me a whole week, all my 48 hours will be dedicated to make this job. Actually, I know I can do it with 30 hours. Can. But I will
You're adding
take
a
a little
buffer.
bit. Yeah, I will take my time because I don't want my boss to take me suddenly more and more. And sometimes I need more than 30 hours. There is not one time in which I can do a non-trivial job. Writing an article, how long does it take you?
Different each time. Don't know.
Different each time, you don't know. Okay, this is what happens. What can we do? This is truly what happens. There is a lot of uncertainty that we need to understand, and having some excess capacity is part of the obvious means to treat and still be with very good performance to our clients, customers. That we will deliver on time, on quality, everything will be as we committed to. And for this, we must have spares. And we need to understand how much spares we need. And many times the spares will be kind of wasted, but they are not wasted. I don't have a choice when I have this amount of uncertainty around, but to have this. This is a huge, important flaw, assumption that somehow went into the blood of organization of everyone must work all the time, and then it led to putting targets to all kinds of workers because we don't trust them, right? We don't trust them that when there is something they need to do, that they will do it. So we measure their work. So they answer us back by reducing the targets and then never doing more than the target because they cannot afford to. Okay, here comes Parkinson law and everything else that is part of what's really wrong in the management of organizations. And this is something that we don't do to ourselves when we are at home. I don't need to look busy all the time with my children. Okay, I don't need to look. Of course, I like to play with my children. I mean, now my children are big enough and I have grandchildren to play with. But again, I don't need to justify anything, etc. But when I'm at work, of course I need.
If you have that boss or that culture, yes.
Yeah, look, when this culture is so spread, this is a problem. Let me tell you a story that happened to me. When I switch on from directing TV to programming, I suddenly found myself working with people who were about 10 years younger than me. I'm a simple programmer in a company, okay? I was about 35. They were in their earliest 20s. I every day wanted to go home on time to see my small children that I had at the time. So after some time, the boss called me and asked me, you know, Eli, that the culture in now here is that people stay and doing quite a lot of overtime, and sort of it looks like you never stay out of your own initiative overtime. And then I asked him back, please tell me, is any of the clients I'm serving complaining about that I am slow or something? So, no, actually, you got very, very good reviews, also from your peers. So then why? Tell me why. Why should I stay and do again something that actually I finished? Actually, my clients are happy with this. And he was stuck. I could see because he had this kind of opposing views coming. On one hand, okay, nobody really complains about me.
Well, I could speak for him. I could speak for him right now if you like.
Yeah, of course. Do.
So he's worried that your action is going to cause an incentive or disincentive, resulting in changing the culture so other people then act in a way that he doesn't like, which is, in this case, not working more overtime.
But if the culture is, we do have our missions and the clients that we need to satisfy. And this is how do we satisfy our clients. And again, you point to something which means there is basically managers are believed not to trust their employees. When this happens, let me tell you very clearly cause and effect. If my boss don't trust me, obviously I don't trust my boss. And this also has ramifications in what do I tell him and what I don't tell him.
And these are culture issues, to be clear to everyone.
Absolutely, these are culture issues, but what either are the wrong assumptions that can be so easily challenged because they don't make sense after all. So, right, if I don't measure the performance of my people, I still need to have signals that will tell me when I cannot trust someone in my company. I need something like this, okay? And maybe his peers will tell me, because again, what is a culture in my organization? I also need to somehow identify my stars. Please see, from my point of view, if I'm a CEO of the company and I have so many people working for me, I'm really interested in whether I have people that I should really throw out of my company because they are rotten apples, and whether I have stars that maybe will become very important after some time, and I need a little bit to ensure, first of all, that they stay with the organization and hopefully go up maybe the way it should. What about all the rest? All the rest are good. Now let me change this to a measurement system in universities. They are measuring the students and giving them marks. Okay? What is the probability that actually this material I should have gotten A+, but because I was under some kind of tension, etc., eventually I got B-? Is there a possibility that this happened? Of course. So problem is, again, how do we measure students in the university? And again, the same thing applies for me. You try by exams that put some student into huge tension, other students are more confident, but it has nothing to do with their level of knowledge and understanding of the thing. So what I like to get when I teach, again, I like to see those which they don't understand, they are not capable to study this material or something like this, and we should not cheat them to tell them that they can, okay? And there are those that excel so much that they could do so much more. And there are quite a lot of students who are good enough, so they will eventually become good enough lawyers, good enough doctors, good enough researchers, probably not Nobel Prize on one hand, but certainly they will be professional enough. Why do I need to make all those small measurements? Eventually will say that my average of the whole thing this year was 83%, which is less than you who got 87%. Tell me, is there a difference between 83 and 87?
Not when you consider that there's fluctuations, error bars in everything we do. plus or minus
What does
5%.
it mean? 83 and 87 means it's good enough, right? Generally speaking. Okay, good enough, you are good enough. So, okay. Maybe I need to see, maybe you are much more than that and somehow, but it's question of how we treat it. How the academy treating it, how the organization is treating them, what they really need to do again. I need to have a method somehow to see those that cannot do and those that a huge future might be for them. Those I need to know about, or I want to know about, with all the difficulties. But the vast majority, which are all the in between, do I really important to me to make those difference between 82 and 88 even? Why? What's the point?
I think if there is a point, they're not saying it. The people that argue for this, it's a hidden assumption that they don't know they have.
Yes, but they are doing it in the organization itself, which means at least university is temporary. Okay, I'm a student. I need to tolerate it. Somehow these are the rules. So I need to go to exams, which I know I'm not too good with exams, but I do understand the material pretty well. And this is my life. I need to get as much as possible, and that's it. Okay. But then I go into working, and this is about the same, but now it's for many years. And I need to keep very good eye on myself not to fail, and how to go up. And I do all the tricks that I am able to do.
So I'd like to bring up something that I think you were trying to explain a few minutes ago. I think people bring cult behaviors from their past. Cult behavior. So let's say they learned some things, policies, values, and beliefs in childhood, and then also in the first 3 companies they worked for, and now they're in a new company with a good culture. They bring all the baggage from before, their values, beliefs, and policies, that in this new environment, well, in all the environments, it was bad for the company, and they were doing it to protect themselves. But in this new environment, it doesn't actually protect themselves. It makes the company want, well, potentially how bad they are to maybe get rid of them.
You are speaking about an obvious obstacle. This is for me an obstacle. The company is a company. Getting new people should pay some kind of attention how they can free the new coming in from all kinds of fears that they got during their way. It could be part of the looking what is a chance of this, and this will be very valuable to my company. But certainly when we get them, we need to try to overcome the obstacle. So this is an obstacle.
It's tough. So part of this, we're talking about this problem that we want to solve in companies, being in some companies their biggest constraint is culture. So what is the solution? What are your ideas for the solution?
Look, first of all, to understand a little bit about some kind about if you call the science of it. What are the cause and effects? What signals can we have, and what is the level of uncertainty, and how can we live with this? Again, trying to create a whole system based on it. If we speak about recruiting people, because I had a long talk with someone in which this is their business, and again, there is a basic flow in almost every company when they recruit a new one. how to write your resume is now kind of a thing that you need to go and learn, especially if you are in high tech, etc. You need absolutely to learn. And what the organization hiring me is taking me is for a specific job, and I need to prove that I had a very much experience in this very much job, without really looking for the people who can easily learn something new versus people who are, like you say, maybe because of too much bad experience, locked in a certain knowledge and environment and hidden assumptions that for them are absolutely true, and they are not really good enough. But it highlights something more. First of all, for me, it's devastating to see how organizations they fire people, at least in some of the Western world, very easily, certainly in the US, much less in Europe, fire people very easily. And because of this, also, people don't feel too much obliged to continue to serve in these companies that did not fire them, but fired others. And so when I see a job that I can apply and get, and gives me $1 more, you tell me, why should I keep with my old company? So the companies don't look on people leaving as this is something that we should have avoided. They don't want to avoid, but this is a huge loss, because let me tell you, if I go out and then you bring in somebody else, what is the chance that somebody else that made so good impression on you cannot really do my job as good as I did?
I think the chances are lower that the new person is going to be as good as the last person.
Okay, so why they establish this kind that letting very easily people go and then just bringing more people in, and when they bringing more people in, they don't think about buffering themselves. Maybe instead of bringing in just one, because we need one, maybe just to be on safe, we will bring two. And you know, if both will look good after 2 or 3 months, we will find both of them good spots. If not, we will need to get part of one, but theoretically we have one, so we look only for one, ties our hands. If somehow we missed, we did not pick the right one, then we are back again with a problem, and we carry a problem for so many months because we let the one who was good out, just we let him leave, and now we are looking for someone else. And okay, somehow we did not pick the best one up front. It's also quite a lot of uncertainty. How do you pick the one who is really fit?
So I think one of the problems here is companies or their culture treats people, employees, as things that don't change, or the things that act the same way every time. Here's what I mean. So you take one person who does really well in one company, put him in a different environment, another company with a very bad culture, and he will not act the way he was in that company. He will act in a very different way, which in everybody's eyes might be, yeah, that's a bad way to act. But so the same person acts different ways in two different environments. I don't think companies think about that kind of stuff.
But they need to, and they need to understand the limitation of what they can know when accepting one. and they need to understand the loss when someone chooses to go another way.
They're losing all the knowledge that person gained while they were working there and contributed
Yes.
to the company. Yes.
They are losing quite a lot, and they don't try to get, wow, I didn't see it happening. Maybe I should learn, because this was a surprise to me. Suddenly that you came to me and told me that you like to move to another company. Okay, I need maybe to ask myself, why didn't I know about it? What happened to you? Even if I cannot really stop you from living, maybe I need to understand much more about how did it happen.
So there are companies that do this thing now called exit interviews. So instead of just somebody is fired or leaves, you try to do an interview with them to find out why. And learn
Excellent.
from
Why
them.
not everybody is doing it?
Yeah. Not everyone is
Okay.
thinking scientifically.
All right. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
okay. I mean,
Yeah.
there is a need to understand a little bit better to improve ourselves. We are not perfect. We need to understand we are not perfect. We can improve ourselves. We need to see when we made a mistake, learn from it, and really improve ourselves. This is what we need to know, to do, all of us. And this is a way also to improve dramatically our organization.
So still on the question of the solution to improving culture, there's a couple of things I would like to talk about. One is there needs to be education, and obviously companies know they have to train their employees. And I do see companies try to train on cultures, but I want to ask you, what do you think companies should be doing? And then the second part of it is, you mentioned something to me in the past about you think big corporations should have something like a intelligence department, like the CIA, like the US has the CIA.
Yes.
So please tell us about that.
Okay. The CIA part comes because every organization is exposed to all kinds of changes coming mainly from the outside, something from the inside. Like, what is a threat that someone in your own organization will steal money from you? Okay, this
Or
is
take a
one.
secret to another company.
Yes, quite a lot of things like this, but also coming from the outside. So Russia invaded the Ukraine. Well, we are a food company in the UK. What does it have to do with us? If you come a little bit more to think about it, suddenly you see that there are certain things that will definitely bring something that impacts the performance of your company. So you need to point out immediately when this happened that we need to check the ramification of this on us.
So that war obviously causes economic differences in some part of the world. And so people should recognize it could have an effect on your economy and your company.
Absolutely. There will be effect on our economy, but what does it mean practically for us? What can we do about it? Okay, maybe there is certain suppliers that we need to look elsewhere. I don't know. Also about how we think it might impact our clients. Maybe the clients will have to change some of their behavior if they were grossly impacted economically because of this.
So we as a company could be educating our clients.
Yes, okay, educating our clients, but at least we need to be prepared. Okay, when the corona started, certainly the airline should have known that the number of flights will dramatically go down. Now, I'm not sure how much they understand. They sort of understand, but not fully, what they need now to do when things are coming back. And I have a friend that is doing a great business just based on this recognition that even the airlines did not fully understand the whole ramifications of what happened before, in which many aircraft were just stuck somewhere because we don't need them. And then now that we need almost everything, and now we don't have enough engines that are in a good enough shape, etc. Okay, if you can predict all of these much earlier than your competitors, you can be so much ahead.
And there's lots of actual real examples of this, where some big event happens, let's say 2008 financial worldwide crash, where lots of companies, let's say 95% of them, waited until the changes hit them, where other companies predicted. And for example, I mean, maybe you could give an example.
Of course, I mean, Goldratt wrote a great article at that time, etc., because he has seen that the whole 2008 crisis came from the bad loans in the banking systems. But then there was a client sour in Asia that they were producing parts for a television. They were not the TV makers. They were produced for big corporations that produce the big TVs. And the demand dropped suddenly from here to almost zero. And they were thinking of how many people we need to fire.
As their first line of defense.
Okay. Eli came to them and said, look, the huge crisis in the banking system might impact all kinds parts of the economy, but the overall number of TV sets sold would not go down. And again, there was already some statistic. It did go down by 3 or 4%.
Which is not enough to fire anyone, right?
Not 80%.
Yes.
But why the orders for you went all the way down? Because your clients, who are a big corporation of producing the TV, their first thing was, we need to reduce our inventory.
So they stopped buying parts.
So they stopped buying. But they will come back. Okay, but they will come back because the demand did not change all that much. They will come back.
And if I remember correctly, it did come back within like 3 months?
Maybe a little bit more, but it did come back.
Yes. So they only needed cash to let them survive 3 or 4 or 5 months, whatever it is.
Okay, they needed to look, what is the impact of cash they needed to do for themselves on their specific point of what to do, how to do. But they needed to understand that it is not that the whole market crashed just because currently the order crashed.
Right, you have to look at the entire economy.
And just did the right analysis, the economy for TV makers will change a little bit, not dramatically. And if not dramatically, and now we have so much reduced orders, the orders will come back pretty soon. And we need maybe even more orders because maybe our competitors are firing their people. And so when the demand will come back, they will not be able to produce. So the big one will come to us to ask for more, not just the same amount, for more.
Yes.
This was all written in a very clear, very nice article. Yeah, okay.
Do you remember the name of the company?
No, I don't remember. I'm sorry.
I vaguely remember Hitachi, but I could be wrong.
Yes, it could be, but again, I'm not sure. So, okay, but the phenomena, I think, looks pretty obvious. So we do have the need for logic. We do have the need for understanding uncertainty, and we do have the need to understand the flawed assumptions that right now exist in the vast majority of the organization. The big one of the biggest one, I mean, it's not the key, but it is a big one, which is called cost per unit, which is a flawed concept by itself. But
it's one of the earliest things Goldratt talked about, I think, in the goal, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, he was...
it's called cost accounting.
Yes, I mean, he said it in an epics in 1983, in which I had a friend there listening to him, telling me how he felt at that time, because Eli said that cost accounting is a number one cause for low profitability. And they were all actually said enemy number one of productivity.
And to be clear to everyone, this is a culture issue.
This is a culture issue because the topic was known to people who really understood. I remember myself in my first year in studying accounting as part of my business studies, my professor for accounting did tell the class, any manager who accepts the cost per unit as is an idiot who eventually will get what he deserves.
And I want to make clear that the person who invented cost accounting told everyone the danger. Don't think this way. But then no one listened to that part and went the wrong way. Eli Goldratt was explaining that.
Yes, also he was explaining that the idea about cost per unit came in the early 20s of the 20th century, in which the vast majority of the costs were really direct labor. And direct labor were paid either per piece or per hour, which about means that the truly variable cost were the vast majority of the overall cost.
So would you say back in 1920 it was less dangerous to get cost accounting incorrectly?
It got you, because you didn't have computers, etc. It got you a little bit good.
It was a good approximation.
A good approximation.
And now it's horrible.
Yes. And then it was stayed on, and then came activity-based costing and starting to do it in a more sophisticated way in order to see that if I've used 5 minutes of your time, I need to put in my cost 5 minutes of the cost of Rami, which is totally ridiculous.
Where today, a lot more of the cost is overhead. So if you try to build in the overhead into cost per unit, and then you make a decision to, to decrease cost per unit. Oh, I forget where I'm going here, but when people make decisions like that, they ignore the overhead cost change.
But the big mistake, even if I take capacity, the fact that we use capacity does not mean that cost was actually performed. Because if overall I'm loaded only 70% of what I theoretically can give and will give when I'm required, then if suddenly on top of the 70% I'm doing another extra 5%, nobody's paying me for it. And I don't expect money for it, because this is the time I should give to work. And so this time they gave me a little bit more work than usual. So what?
So could you speak to the education part? How can a company educate people on culture?
Look, this is a very ambitious one, and education in itself, I'm a little bit horrified almost by it. Look, I've educated quite a lot. I dare say, if I look on me, that I'm probably much better educated for relatively brilliant people. I am maybe less for people who are not as brilliant as others. And so there are quite a lot of things to deal with education, because there I find even more what you call pseudoscience. Because at least in a business, they try to make some cause and effect, even though when they are really faulty. In education, they go on new programs here and there without really testing it, without really putting on the what we hope from it and what are the negative, possible negative if we go this way. For whom it will work good and for whom it will work so much less than so. I don't know. I suspect many of them do not have the answers. Eli Goldratt did TOC for education quite a lot in order to face some of those problems on how you teach. And one of the important things about how you teach that the student needs really to understand why someone should educate him on this topic, how it is connected to this student.
A marketing statement that would convince the student why they should learn it.
Yes. So if we teach the Bible to 7-year-old kids, why a 7-year-old kid should learn the Bible? I think they should, by the way. But I think they need to have some kind of, first of all, recognition, no matter what. The people will, when you grow up, you will speak with, which some of them will be more religious than others. Something you need to know. And this is a whole culture of the past, maybe quite a lot also now, that someone that will be appreciated by others need at least to know the basics. So even a 7-year-old kid needs to understand at least why people telling him things that currently for his life, he does not see any use for it. So we need to cross this difficulty. I'm not saying it's easy to explain, but the understanding why I need to know it is very important.
So I'd like to say, if you were finished, were you finished on that point?
Yes.
I'd like to say about education, about also specifically, I mean, education in general, but also educate a company educating its new people on the culture. It calls into question how education works. And I'm guessing most people know, if I tell you an idea and then later you see me act opposite of that, that's different than if I tell you an idea and then later I do that same idea. So our actions educate also. And really, a lot of the education that we think is bad that people have, these policies from their old environment, those things got taught to them not by words, or not directly, it's by actions. And something to consider if people are watching, you should learn meme theory by The Selfish Gene, a book by Richard Dawkins, and then also The Beginning of Infinity, a book by David Deutsch, explaining how memes propagate from person to person. A meme is an idea that goes from one person's head to another person's head, and what we're talking about is generation over generation.
Yes.
It could be thousands of years, but it applies to a single person, a single family, a company who's trying to change a culture. And so most times that memes are propagating from one brain to another, it is by actions, and really there aren't any words. So as an example, if you say a certain kind of remark and then I get offended and angry and I give an ugly face and then I don't talk to you anymore, those are the kinds that's an idea that can go into your head that you then use later with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the typical way that people see education is like what they think is happening in school, what they saw in school. And I mean the way those schools thought education was about. And I don't think it's very good. Yeah. Except maybe I'm going to contradict my statement I just said. I think if you look at education a different way, some education crosses over like this. Like, I'm learning from you now directly one-on-one. You learn from Eli Goldratt directly one-on-one. I also learned some from Eli Goldratt through a book, but I'm learning a lot more one-on-one from that person who learned one-on-one. Eli Goldratt learned from, I don't know who, some other physicist who learned from it. And then there's Einstein in there, and then Isaac Newton all the way back. One-on-one, person to person, have been learning from each other.
Yes.
And all of that is people saying ideas, but also the actions and culture is transferring over. Even, so just to go back to what Feynman said in his Cargo Cult Science speech, he said that, and he said this, he gave an apology at the end of his speech. He said, I'm sorry that we physicists have not been teaching you the scientific approach directly. We've only been giving you examples and hoping you learn that way. But that did work. That did work from, you could go back to Isaac Newton till today, physicist to physicist.
Come on, even regular education also works to a certain degree. Okay? People get out of school and they know quite a lot, and then they learn more. So we need to recognize that it's not that we need to start from scratch. We have a system already, and the question is how we improve the system. Taking into account there is already a system. You might be more satisfied or less. Nobody is absolutely happy from it, but to say it's all is total failure, I think this is going the other way. It's not a huge failure. There is something that has been achieved so much, but we need to look on what we do now and how to truly improve it. And what I see that frightens me is all kinds of ideas that look on paper, look very nice, but they were not tested, and then they are done in a huge way, and suddenly it all fails, and then we are going simply back to the system before it, and we have learned nothing. And this, I am truly frightened. And this kind of a thing to say, the education system is not good enough, so let us do something dramatically different. Hey,
yeah, we don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. When we
what
make changes,
can we do now that will bring us the most value, and we will judge it with very big eyes, because we know that some unexpected things could happen as well. We cannot know exactly what will happen. So we need really to judge what is happening and getting the right way. And if needed, we will correct what we did so far in order to be better. So if we tried something and 70% was good, but 30% was new things that we don't like, hey, we need to keep the 70% that were good. We should not just go backwards.
And to be clear, it's actually difficult to know what to keep and what pieces of the system was delivering the results. So if you, for example, tried to make 10 changes all at once, thinking that those 10 changes are the result, and then let's say you didn't get the outcome you wanted, you don't know which of the 10 things was the cause.
Yes, you don't know, even though I still think that with very good analytics, you can have a better understanding. But you are right. Don't do 10 things at the same time.
Baby steps.
Yes, baby steps. We can learn how to do them relatively fast with fast learning.
Yes.
Fast learning, because every step we do might have good part, it might have imperfect parts that spoil some things, that we need to identify and correct only that part.
And the point of the baby steps, just to be clear, is to recognize and deal with and factor in uncertainty.
Yes, of course, need to.
Is there anything else you wanted to talk about in the business world in the context of all this we're talking about?
The business world needs to look very good on themselves and ask a simple question. Did I, or the business, went up and up and up and up again in the last 20 years, or this was not exactly the shape? Because if this was not exactly the shape, there are certain things I need to learn. So I need to tell myself, I probably made some mistakes, I need to check, and I need to improve.
All right.
And
well,
maybe I need to listen more to others.
Yeah.
With all the criticisms that I have in the world, I don't mean listen just to take what they tell me. But
we don't mean blindly.
Give it some kind of opening.
Critical listening, yes. Critical listening. Well, I think
Even
we're over.
Eli Goldratt, I never took everything he told me as is.
Right. No scientist would.
Okay, but
I noticed a mistake from non-scientists, people that are lay people, when they say things like, you hear this phrase, 95% of climate scientists believe something. No scientist believes in a theory because other scientists believe in it.
Right.
They judge by the content. And by the way, I did not want to make a claim about climate science. I agree with climate science, science in general. So I wasn't trying to poop on anything there.
Yeah. Certainly, I don't like to put any view about it because I don't have enough knowledge.
I also don't know very much. Yeah. I have not studied anything like that deeply. So we'll go ahead and stop here. And
okay, Rami, thank you very much.
You,
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.